Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagined podcast. I'm your host and caregiver and business coach, Melissa Miller. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, be sure to like, follow, subscribe on my blog, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're watching this episode, so you'll be able to be up to date on what's been happening with the podcast and what content I have coming up for you. Today, I am very excited about my guest, Rick Henkin, because Rick has such a powerful story of being he's also a spousal caregiver. But what I love is that he has really worked so hard to put caregiving in the forefront of people and support caregivers in ways that aren't often thought about. We think a lot about giving resources, which are good for making sure we have everything we need to care for our loved ones. But what about the caregiver? What
Hmm.
do we need in terms of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs? And so I am so excited to have Rick on to share about his work, his story of caring for his wife. And Rick and I just had a really good, when we were playing this episode, I have to say I was very excited to have Rick on because our stories, just the timelines are so similar of when we both got into the depths of our caregiving spousal journeys. And I just really love what Rick has to share. So, Rick, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity, Melissa. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. The caregiving, I really always have envisioned the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagined podcast just being an amazing place for caregivers who are balancing maybe entrepreneurial pursuits like we are to help other caregivers, or even just the caregiver in general, just to have a safe place to get resources in terms of self-care and caregiving and business, and just really have the tools they need, the support, like the support in their back pocket that they're probably not going to be able to get anywhere else, and that
Mhm.
is free. So they get a chance
Right.
to get these resources because they're dishing out so much money elsewhere to do things. So anyway, so Rick, obviously my listeners have probably never heard of you, probably never met you. So can you tell us a little bit about your story, about how we'll start out with just the caregiving journey of itself. We'll get to the
Sure.
entrepreneur a little bit later, but for starters, can you share with with my audience, how you came to be a caregiver for your wife?
Sure. In 2019, uh, my wife, her name is Sonia. She had no attention span. We'd be sitting there watching TV. She'd be getting up and down. I'd say, Sonia, wait for the commercial, because I'd pause because I want to share it with her. She just up and down, up and down. And I thought, okay, we need to go see a doctor about this, but I didn't want to go see the primary care physician. What I really wanted was to find a doctor or doctors who specializes in brain situations. So I did some research. I found the Pacific Neuroscience Institute here in Santa Monica, California. They have a national reputation, anything dealing with brain health. And I made an appointment for her. My hope was that they would just adjust her medication. She was taking antidepressants at the time. That was my hope. And on the way there, Sony was very resistant. Why do we have an appointment? You're the one that needs an appointment. I don't need an appointment. It's you. Okay. So we get there, and the doctor gives her, various tests because different parts of the brain process things differently. And she did fine on I think there were 5 or 6 tests. She did fine on most of them. And then he gave her the classic clock test. For those of you who may not know, it's where you're asked to draw a circle, like for a clock, draw the numbers inside the clock, and then draw the hands showing a specific time. So he asked her to draw the hands showing 10 to 11, and she just stood there. She just stared and stared literally for 5 minutes. And we both started to cry. And that's when she realized she had a problem. We diagnosed it, of course, at that time as just mild cognitive impairment, and said that it's like a jigsaw puzzle to figure out what the actual diagnosis is, and it would take some time. So Sonia went through several CAT scans, and finally she had an amyloid PET scan in January of 2020 at the age of 65, and they diagnosed it as Alzheimer's. So that's when our life started to change. At the beginning, she still went outside. She did things. She walked around. Sometimes she'd get confused. We had to take her driver's license away because she was she had a few little parking lot incidents where she'd bang up against a pole, or she'd be driving out to visit her son and just forget how to get there. One time she came home, she came home from the market, she was crying because she pulled out her Target card to pay for the groceries, which of course they're not accepting, and they just put her card aside. And then as time went on, she developed what's called Capgras syndrome, named after a French psychiatrist from the 1920s. It's an irrational belief that the person whose face you recognize, which is me, is an imposter. And nothing can shake that. Photos don't shake it. Other people don't shake that belief. And we'd be sitting there on the sofa, and she'd look at me and say, "Where do you live? I want you out of here before I call the police." And then she'd run next door, tell the neighbors about the strange man in her house. I'd go take a walk, come home in about 30, 45 minutes to find her crying, wondering where I'd been because she had no recollection of what had taken place. Needless to say, it was maddening. It led to a lot of tension between us. This is all new to me. It's all new to all of us. We never took a course in high school or a course in college about how to deal with this. We're all just figuring it out on our own as we go. And the one thing I did know, and this was as time went on, because I found myself stressed, stressful, angry, resentful, is the toll that the burden of care can take on my own life, on all of our lives. And I wasn't about to let this disease take me down as well. And it's really a significant medical phenomenon. The stressors from emotional stressors, psychological, physical, financial, all those take a toll on us. And I read an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association that said that family caregivers have a 63% higher risk of dying than their peers who aren't caregivers. And oftentimes it's the caregiver that ends up in the hospital before their loved one. And, I thought, okay, that's cool. That's cool. I'm on top of this. So I started doing some research online, figuring, well, this can't be a new issue. There's got to be all kinds of information regarding it. And on website after website, I found the same information. Find 15 minutes, take a walk, exercise, meditate. It's all good information, but it has nothing to do with my feelings and my emotions. So I realized that I've got to do this on my own because mine's the only brain that can change. Sonia's is just going to get worse. And for months, I worked on myself and worked on myself. In the meantime, Sonia, who was the most incredible grandmother, we have 6 granddaughters, she'd be on the floor playing with them, dress up, makeup. She was their best friend. She became the mean grandma. And during the day, she was going to daycare strictly for people with dementia, and they loved her there. Look, they love Sonia everywhere she goes, but they loved her there. She'd help them set up, she'd help them break down. But when she came home, never knew what we were going to get. And we live in a duplex, which may be different in different parts of the building. Country. It's a two-story. We live on the ground floor, and one of my sons and his family live on the top floor, just 2 units. And she'd run upstairs in the evening, knock on their door 15, 20 times a night, interrupt them during dinner. The kids are trying to do their homework. And she became disruptive to the family. And one day, my son calls me upstairs. His wife is she's from Oregon, so she had taken the kids for vacation to Oregon. He said, "I want to tell you about this job I'm applying for." And he shows me. He's doing it online. This is during, I guess it was during COVID. And he said, no, it was after COVID. Otherwise, she wouldn't be in daycare. And he said, "It's in Ashland, Oregon. We live in Los Angeles." And my heart sunk. Wait, I felt like I'm being abandoned. And he said, "It's the most difficult decision I ever had to make, my mother or my family." And he says, "My family's got to come first." And I had never wanted to do anything about having Sonia go into a facility because I just didn't feel that was right. And I didn't want to do anything just because it was easier for me. But at that point, I contacted her doctors, her nurse practitioner, her psychologist, her therapist, and I asked them, why is it she's so great at daycare, and when she comes home, it's a different story? And And I was told it's because at daycare, she has structure, and at home, it's the Wild West. And they all said it was probably time for her to move. And I felt that with them saying that, okay, it's not, I'm not doing it just because it makes my life easier. That's not right. That's disrespectful in my mind. So she moved into a memory care facility. She was there for almost 2 years. I visited her every day. And at the beginning, I couldn't spend more than an hour with her, to be honest. There was just too much residual anger. But as time went on, my feelings got more and more tender. I looked forward to seeing her. We'd go take a walk. We'd hang out for a few hours. And she came home last year, in April 1st of the last year, 2024, uh, because we had long-term care insurance and it ran out. And I'm glad she's home. She's different at this point. She's more mellow. She's easier. Be honest, and I hope nobody hates me for what I'm about to say, but I know most caregivers are looking to get away from their loved one. That's their respite, to get away. Sonia is my respite. I look forward to picking her up at the end of daycare. She still goes 5 days a week. I look forward to the weekends, hanging out with her, getting together with friends with her. She's my respite because it takes my mind off of everything else in the world. So, so the end result of all this, while I was trying to work on myself, and I finally came through to what I call my heaven island. And it's just a place of peace, acceptance, and clarity. And then I thought, well, I wonder if I can help other people with this. And I didn't know what I would find, but I went on Facebook, dozens and dozens of groups for family caregivers whose loved ones have dementia, thousands or tens of thousands of members. And I started looking at their comments, and most of them were just venting. When's this going to be over? I hate my life. I don't have any more friends. One woman was even considering suicide because it was easier than taking care of her husband. And I felt like, hey, I've got an answer for you. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to worry about the burden of care taking its toll on you. And so I created a course called Caregiver Mastery. And the course, look, I understand caregivers don't have time. They don't need one more thing to do. So I made the course in small bites. We're talking a few minutes each day that you can learn, you can change, and you get to a point where you reach your own heaven island, whatever that may be for you. And I think, what was I going to say? I had a thought, but you know what? I'm an old guy too, so
Well,
what
Rick,
can I
I love
say?
what you shared. And
Okay,
again, your story, because that's how it starts. It really, most of the time when you become a caregiver, you don't have pre-warning. It was very
right.
sudden for you and Sonia. It was very sudden for my husband and I.
Hmm.
His first seizure was basically at 4:30 in the morning. We
Mm.
woke up to take care of our daughter, almost 1 year old daughter, to change her diaper. I stepped out of the room to do
Yeah,
something. I came back. He had a strange look on his face. And I asked him, "Are you all right?" And he got 3 words out,
mm.
"I don't know," and just passed out. And he had
Wow.
fell backwards hard, demolished a empty diaper box that was on the floor
Yeah.
of her nursery. I caught my daughter just in time when he was collapsing
Wow.
and got her into the crib. And when he came to, he had no recollection. And
Right.
initially thinking with my former healthcare training, I'm thinking, well, okay, there is a 20-year age gap between us. He's in his early 50s, so maybe it's just like a UTI or a chemical imbalance, or he's just exhausted from being
Mhm.
up all night with our daughter and then working 40 plus hours a week to put food on the table. It's a lot different in your 50s than it would be in your
Right.
20s or 30s, like where I was at the time. So but I never thought in a million years that it was a seizure disorder in my life, or that it was,
Mhm.
or worse yet, it was an incurable seizure disorder.
Right.
So it was very sudden. And he had his first episode in December of 2019. Then he had two more subsequent
Okay.
ones in January and March of 2020. By
Hmm.
April and May, we were looking at working with a neurologist. By end of May, beginning of June, we were working with a neurologist specialist because the seizure activity was still tracking at 10 to 20 plus seizures a month. And he was blowing
Yeah.
through medication after medication. And here we are 5 years later. So when you become a caregiver, it's very sudden. and we don't
Mhm.
anticipate it because a lot of times, when things go awry with the body, 9 times out of 10, it's something that is unexpected. It's unexpected.
Right.
And so then when you're thrust into that role of being a caregiver, you don't have the mental capacity and preparation of how to handle it because
Mhm.
it is no man's land.
Mhm.
It is a wild card. You don't know what to anticipate. Now, I'm blessed. I mean, I have 15 years experience working in long-term healthcare facilities, but specifically with elderly and dementia patients. So the training that I had definitely helped me when I was transitioning to caring for. I've cared for my husband the last
Mhm.
5 years now, and I cared for my father and my grandmother the last 2 years of their lives, and that helped me in those seasons. But the average person doesn't. You're walking around trying to understand medical terminology. You're trying to basically understand German when you only speak English. You're trying to
Mhm.
understand what the options are for
Right.
your loved one's care and how each option can impact making their overall health quality of life better. Besides, yes,
Mhm.
trying to stabilize their illness, but is it also impacting and tipping the scale in other ways? I mean, with my father, that was very much the problem. He had 3 different chronic conditions. Every time we tried to tweak and work with one, then the other 2 issues would have bad flare ups.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
definitely a bit about a scale of balance.
Mhm.
And at the fulcrum of this whole thing as the caregiver is you are very much impacting how the scale is very much tipped with how well you take care of yourself. And again,
Mhm.
I like what you say, like when I started my business, the thing I hated seeing on social media so much was all these things like go to the spa or mom days, or,
Yeah.
self-care. It's not all that, there's so
Mhm.
much more um, that needs to be done to really actually um, you know, really feed your soul and your mind and your body, like exercise. Like, I mean, obviously, as a former healthcare worker, I will say the no brainer stuff, if not missing
Mhm.
wellness visits, making sure you're getting enough nutrition, hydration, enough sleep, movement,
Right.
that's important because as caregivers, that does help with, your mental, emotional, and spiritual cope, but also just physically having the strength because some of us are caring for people that are bedridden or can't walk
Mhm.
or anything. My husband's very high functioning. The only time I struggle is when he's down from a seizure. Then he's
Yeah.
very weak. But I know
Yeah.
a lot of people are dealing with people like what I took care of in my healthcare career that are bedridden, and you're doing everything, helping them dress, feed, bathe, everything. And
Mhm.
so it's very important that we do that, but also thinking about like what you were touching on, Rick, about the mental and emotional aspect and the spiritual aspect. What are you doing to address those pain points of that anger, that anxiety, that extra stress? Because obviously, I know I do talk a lot about, like with mental health and well-being, like, definitely leveraging people in your faith, people in terms of professional, like therapists, and counselors are also really good because they're trained to handle traumatic situations. But it goes beyond that. Like, what lights you up? Like, I think just because, especially as a caregiver, now not to drop the hat on your passions as well either, about doing things that light you up,
Mhm.
that are part of you, that you were very actively doing before you came a caregiver. Those pieces are still very much a part of you and need to continue, because here's the thing: even after the caregiving journey is over, you're still going to
Mhm.
come back to who you are. And if you're disconnected, you're not going to be able to handle it. It's going to be like a big smack in
Mhm.
the face. And so, what lights you up for me? It's been one thing that I have done is just really getting back into journaling, getting back into knitting, getting into my
Mhm.
knitting projects, definitely upping on my water intake
Right.
and what do you call it? Exercise has been things. So that's fallen by the wayside from the beginning of my journey. But still, everyone's different. So for those of you who are listening, as Rick and I are sharing here, I want you to think about what are some areas what are some areas in your life that you're very passionate about, or things that you love doing that you're very passionate about, or maybe some new avenues that, why not? Why not still pursue things that you have a passion for, or that just
Mhm.
really light you up? I mean, obviously, Rick and I, when we became caregivers, we didn't plan on using our story to turn it into an income or a business or whatever, but
Mhm.
it's where God took us, and there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. So, but maybe for you, it might be getting your feet wet in some other fashion that really lights you up. Because like Rick was saying that Sonia is his way to get away from everything and have
Mhm.
some peace and joy. For me, it's kind of the opposite. My business is what lights me up because
Mhm.
I'm doing things that are totally from left field that I never did in the healthcare industry for over a decade. And so I love getting to meet and do like podcasts, getting to have intentional conversations like this where I get to meet and work with people all over the world and helping my clients who are just struggling and feeling that there's no way
Mhm.
out and giving them kind of the back pocket and benefit of talking with someone who's been in the healthcare industry to help them out because of course I will never say that I know everything, no one does, but being able to
Right.
just use what I've learned to kind of fast track some of the things that they're having to learn how to do, like document, learning to observe and document changes in their loved one's condition, learning to um, figure out ways to get creative with balancing work time with caregiving and how to keep medical history organized. There's so many moving pieces to being a caregiver that
Mhm.
not everyone talks about. Like even if you go to the doctor, they won't tell you, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. You have to kind of figure it out. So how can you streamline those tasks and figure and the information to where it makes sense and you can find it and you're not, kicking yourself later when you can't find something.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, um, so Rick, what has been going kind of back to kind of getting us back? We went on a tangent there, but I love it. So getting the conversation back on track here. Um, once you figured out how to find your heaven island, so what was the
Mhm.
process like for you when you were doing that? Like if someone came to you and today and they were like, you know what, help me, where would you
Mhm.
tell them to start?
Well, this is what my course is about. You have to change your mindset. And while that's a simple sounding concept, I realize that that's not the easiest thing to do, but you have to look at things differently. It's the only way to save yourself. Even now, look, I'm human, of course. Sony does something and I feel myself starting to get stressed out. I catch myself, I'm mindful about it because what's more important to me is my own health, not raising my blood pressure, not raising my stress level. So when she does something, I stop and I just realize, hey, I'll give you a perfect example because this just happened. I have I have a temporary bridge, my front teeth, and it keeps falling out. And I took it, when it fell out the other night, I put it on the sink. I was going to clean it. And then I forgot about it. I went to get Sonia to bring her into the bathroom to get her to clean up. And while I turned around, because she's so fast, she broke off one of the teeth and the rest of it went down the drain. Now, I could get all upset with her. What purpose does it serve? I could explain things to her. That doesn't mean anything. It's there. The only person I can save is myself. And I take that back. I can save her too, because my getting upset with her is only going to upset her. Our loved ones are still, they still feel what we feel. If we're angry with them, they feel it. If we're loving towards them, they feel it. So I just stopped myself before anything came out, and I said to myself, A, I'm not going to let this bother me. I'm just going to call up the dentist. B, I'm not going to get upset with Sonia. She didn't do it on purpose. She doesn't even know what she was doing, so there's no point to it. And one thing I want to say to all caregivers, recognize that you're doing the best you can, and that's good enough. I don't care what anybody else tells you. You're, armchair generals who have never walked your path, like they know better, whether it's family or friends. Let them take your loved one for a weekend and see how they do. But again, you're doing the best you can, and that's good enough. And no matter how incredible you are as a caregiver, your loved one is progressing and has nothing to do with your caregiving. You're not in control of the disease's progress.
I
So, like I
love
say,
that. I
yeah,
love that. I hope you guys are
Mhm.
listening to that. You're not in control of how fast the disease progresses because listen, you could do all the things right. You could follow all the
Mhm.
protocols that the doctors or your medical professionals draw up for your loved one, and it could still have a moment where the illness decides, okay, for it doesn't matter. Okay, I know you all are trying to slow it down. I'm putting the foot on the gas and we're gone. So
Hmm.
you have no control. Obviously, as caregivers, we want to try, our job is to try to give our loved ones the best quality of life for as long as
Right.
possible,
Of course.
and to give them a choice about how much they can take. If they get to the point where they say they're done, as hard as that
Hmm.
is, that's one thing I did in one workshop. I talked about that. I know it's not easy, but it's so important. It's so important that, they're still very, even though they may not verbally or, verbally or physically be able to communicate the way they used to. It's different. They still are, they still are in control of what
Hmm.
they're comfortable with and what they can handle. And our job is like, and like to that extent too, like, is it going to serve them and make them feel loved and supported? If we're, like Rick was saying, getting angry, getting frustrated with
Right.
them, and it's not going to really change the trajectory of their illness and how many days that God has ordained for them. Because we all
Hmm.
have a time clock, and sometimes, and there are obviously extenuating factors like, um, like it's, say, another underlying illness or something that,
Hmm.
when if their immune system is already compromised, it drags it down, and then they're more susceptible, and that could take them faster than the actual illness itself. And
Right.
so that's what happened with my father. And it wasn't the dementia or the heart problems. It was fluid that built up around, from being sick, that built up around his heart, and that's what killed him. So, and his body could not, we got it under control in the hospital for a few days. We discharged him on hospice to give him some time to rest for palliative care, because he was sick. He was nowhere near close to the baseline he was 6 weeks prior. And
Right.
our team was very smart of saying, if we keep him on home health, he will lose services and then he won't have anything. If, because he's
Hmm.
too weak, if we at least pull it back and put him on palliative care, put him on hospice, and then give him 6 months to see where he's at. If he's improving, we can always pull him back on home health, but at least that way his foot's still in the door. That was the
Hmm.
best thing we did, because he passed away a week later after that final
Oh,
hospital setting. It
okay.
was that fast. And so you have no idea. You have no
Hmm.
idea. All you can do is just keep your ear to the ground. Try to get yourself as much information to do the best you can to give your loved one the best quality of life that they can have,
Hmm.
while at the same time, like Rick is saying, which I totally agree with, you're also doing your due diligence with making sure that you are giving yourself the best quality of
Hmm.
life. Because again, the caregiving journey, is only a season of your life, in the grand
That's
scheme
right.
of your life. It's only a season. For me, my husband is 20 years, almost 20 years my senior, so he will more than likely go, and then I will still be here raising
Hmm.
our daughter. So, and being here with her. So, keeping intact with things that my passions, so like my faith, my hobbies, spending time with family, socializing with friends, not becoming a hermit or a recluse in my own home,
Hmm.
because that's the thing that's easy to do, because being a caregiver, it's like it makes us afraid to go out and live life, because, well, what's how something happens with our loved one. That's
Right.
where, we're like, I know you, like what Rick was talking about earlier, where like he likes to be around his loved one, but I also want to keep it though twofold too, where maybe to be able to give yourself that ounce of still connecting and staying connected with who you are, maybe it is arranging for a daycare or
Hmm.
someone to come and sit with your loved one, so you can go out and do something, not to go to the spa or have, your feet pedicured, but, to do
Why
something.
not?
Maybe, yeah, or why not? Maybe it is to actually go and volunteer in your church at the food bank for an hour, or maybe it is to go and take a class, a pottery class that you've been wanting to do, but you think you keep saying and putting it off. No, when I have time, I don't have time. You have time. Now is the time while you are able to breathe,
Hmm.
walk, talk, and move your hands and enjoy these moments. And it might take some planning and it might take some creativity, but it is so worth it, because then when you are full in mind, in body, and in spirit, your loved one is going to be more full, because they have a more calm, like we were saying, a more
Absolutely.
calm and present person there, to be able to
Absolutely.
meet their needs and serve them. And you'll also be sharper as a caregiver, because you're rested, you're not stressed, you're not
Hmm.
anxious. And that is critical, though, too, as a caregiver, because as a caregiver, we are the lifeline. We are we're the frontline worker, like it was in the pandemic, but literally for your loved one, you are their frontline worker. And so any information that you can give their medical team is what's going to dictate
Mhm.
the choices and the treatments that they get. And God forbid we miss something. So, you need to be sharp, but you can only be sharp if you take time for not just your physical needs in terms of sleep, water, nutrition, but your mind, your
Mhm.
emotions, and your spirituality. That's the only
Mhm.
way this is going to work, guys. It's not going to, there's no other way around it. There's no way to work because you have to have a way um, to still vent. I mean, we don't want you, Rick and I obviously don't want you to just stay only in the negative Nancy, like, like, oh, that my life is over and this is hard, or
Mhm.
like this is never going to change. But at the same time, we're a human being and God gave us emotions. So those
Mhm.
emotions of anger, frustration, and anxiety, um, they're part of of who we are. We have those emotions and we have to then express them in a healthy way so we can move forward and cope. Because bottling them up and just saying, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm fine, that doesn't serve us either. Because all it
Mhm.
does is
Just
all
push
that
you
does,
down.
yeah, all that does is just, it's like the best image I can have is like a tea kettle or a pressure cooker.
Mhm.
It just, when you hold on to those things, eventually it's going to blow. And
Right.
and unfortunately, sometimes it ends up blowing up at our loved one, our sick loved one, who they don't need that too. Like Rick was saying, like with his teeth, yelling at a person with dementia and trying to get them to today, to the time and date of today, it does not work.
No.
If they're back in 1979, it's 1979. That's the
Right.
only way it works.
Right. Yeah, you have to look at it. First of all, I always tell people, you know what? It could just as easily have been you as your loved one. And going back to something you said earlier, when Sonia first went into the memory care facility, a friend called up, invited me over for dinner with, some of our other friends would be there. And I just felt, well, wait, that's Sonia used to be included in that. I can't go. And so I turned her down. And then I realized later, while I'm sitting at home, this doesn't affect Sonia's quality of life whatsoever if I don't go, but it certainly affects mine. And
Mm,
my point being that you have to take care of yourself. Guilt is a big issue for caregivers. It's a
yes.
big issue. And again, it goes back to looking at things differently. It's like I will tell you that your thoughts create your emotions. It's never the circumstances of your loved one's behavior that creates your emotions of anger or stress or resentment or whatever. It's what you choose to think about it. We all have the choice to think what we want to think. So it's a matter that's part of, I mean, that's what my course is about. It's changing the way you look at things. You have to. I remember on the driving down to visit Sonia, on the side of a building was a quote. Somebody had painted a quote from Maya Angelou, and it said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. And it's so true. Why is it you take two paraplegics, both in wheelchairs, same age, auto accident? One's bemoaning his life, saying, my life is over, nobody's ever going to love me. And the other person's out playing wheelchair basketball. Everything else is the same. It's the way they choose to look at it. And I'm not saying by changing your mindset, you push everything down. That's not the point. You don't really need to push anything down because you're looking at it differently. You're looking at a different in a different respect. One night I was helping Sonia go to bed, getting her ready, and the thought occurred to me that as caregivers, we're cast in a very unique role that a lot of people aren't, insofar as we have I call it a gift now, to make the rest of our loved one's life joyful or miserable. And
Mm,
when, the time's going to come, but when the time comes, I don't want to look back and say, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have said that. There's a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that I keep on the wall behind me that I've had for decades. It's a long quote, but it's about success. But the last two lines say, uh, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. And I take that to heart.
Yeah.
I think that's just so important. My goal is to make Sonia laugh if I can and smile
Yeah.
and take care of her that way. Again, it could have been me.
It could. That's the thing. With caregiving, it could be anybody. I mean, and
Hmm.
statistically, I mean, like, the no-brainer caregiving roles that one can expect because of the age gap, the natural age gap is
Right.
grandparents and parents. Okay. Spouses, you kind of think of that more like 65 or above, like once, the children are grown. Statistically, you think like normal. Like if nothing happens and goes wrong, usually it's like after the kids are grown and off to college and raising families of their own, you anticipate, just with age, the body breaking down and, having to maybe segue into something like that. But you don't
Mhm.
anticipate that. I mean, like for
No.
me, I became a caregiver in my mid 30s. When I
Right.
had a 1 year old after we just had a baby and had gone through 6 years
Yeah.
of infertility to have a child. And so we thought we were through the
Yeah.
rough patches, but no, we got handed this. And so it's definitely changed how we parent, how we our
Mhm.
marriage and how we work and our careers, everything. But we have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Do you want to have it take you down, or do you want to um,
Exactly.
run with it? And so that's the whole preface for my business. It's like, I'm running with it. Okay, I might not be practicing as an aide anymore, but I certainly want to take the experiences I've had of personally caregiving for multiple family members, my 15 years in healthcare, and just sharing some hope and some ideas of how I've made it work
Mhm.
to be a caregiver, because it's expensive. I mean, because essentially when you're becoming a caregiver, you're basically spending 2,000. It's the equivalent of spending $2,000 and spending 3 months of your time to be trained as a
Mhm.
certified nursing assistant to do the basic things like ADL care, and vital management, monitoring symptoms. That's basically the gist of what a CNA does in a
Mhm.
nutshell.
Yeah.
So family
Yeah.
caregivers are learning how to do that on the fly, or caregiver
Right.
entrepreneurs are learning how to do that on the fly without having the benefit of going through a training program.
Yeah. Negative thoughts are going to come up. That's
Oh yeah.
part of our nature as human beings. It goes back to preserving ourselves back, I guess, in the caveman days.
Hmm.
Because you always had predators you had to worry about. So always thinking the worst. We may not need that as much, but it's part of our psyche. But when these thoughts come up, when my life is over, when is this going to end? Ask yourself, how does this thought serve me? How does it restrict me? How much unnecessary pressure, stress, and anxiety is it adding to my life? And what would happen if I change this thought? Because our thoughts are not absolute truth. They're just thoughts.
Hmm.
The very fact that we can change them tells you that they're just thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, then you can take it a step further and try to rewrite that thought by taking some practical steps.
Yeah. That's
You
why I
know?
love journaling so much, because, you get out what you're thinking and you get on
Hmm.
paper so you can actually observe it. And then you can, like you said, like, I do this in the mornings and the evenings. I have my little prompts and I write, and then you see what you're thinking or comes to mind of what you're thinking about X, Y, and Z. And then you have the chance then on the next line to write something to work on rewiring your brain and your thoughts
Right.
about and perspective about how you want to perceive this.
Hmm.
One thing my coaches actually have been really honing in on me this week has been, Melissa, you've been, because we've been in a crazy season this year, with my husband having to um, start some new treatments. And then
Hmm.
I've had some health issues as well because I have chronic lung problems. And then, so that's derailed like my ability to work on the business and just the timetable where I had for some goals and some other things and like health goals with getting ready for a marathon, 5K marathon, this fall and training for that, but then being sick and not being able to train and work out. And so, with all that to say, I love what my coaches, both my email marketing coach and my business coach, said to me this week. They said, they both in unison almost said, just take it one thing at a time.
Hmm.
Just take it one thing at a time. If because guess what? Stressing yourself out for anything, whether you're an entrepreneur or just being a caregiver or whatever, or you have some other goal or passion, stressing yourself out does not serve you. If stressing yourself out was the key to make you work harder, faster, and get you to where you want to go, then by all means, people would be talking about that in all the books, the resources, courses, things like that
Mhm.
for eons, right? For eons. But
Right.
that's not the case. Stress is a killer. It steals your joy. It steals your
Hmm.
energy. It robs you from living your best life. And so where can you find joy amid the chaos? Where can you find that ounce of hope? How can you reframe where you're at now to get you to where you want to go? And how
Hmm.
can you change, and by doing so, how can you then impact your loved one's life? Because like Rick said, for caregiving, the caregiver is usually there until they go. Some it might be faster, some it might be longer. Um, excuse me. So, I want you guys to go through this journey where you're empowered, you're still living the best quality of life, you're going after your dreams, you're not waiting, you're still doing and going after things that bring you love and passion and laughter and joy, because by doing so for you, that's what you're going to be giving your loved one.
That's right. That's right. And if you're approaching it by taking care of yourself, by extension, you're taking care of your loved one because the
Mm.
quality of life for both of you improves.
Oh, yes.
I mean, another way I think about it is, and I say this to your listeners, what if the biggest source of stress in your caregiving journey isn't your loved one's behavior, but your reaction to it? I mean,
I
it comes
love
back to
that.
the same thing, comes back to the same thing. That when I realized that truth, it changed a lot of things for me.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah.
And again, I'm look, I'm focused on Sonia's care, but I'm focused on my own care. I don't want to have this disease shorten my life at all. It's bad enough that it's shortening her life, but not, I
Right.
don't want to shorten my life either.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting from my perspective, since I'm a mom, I have a 6-year-old child. And
Mhm.
so, one thing my husband and I have been very adamant about is like, okay, my husband's sick. I have 3 chronic health issues of my own. My husband
Mhm.
is sick with an incurable chronic illness. So what? We're still going to be parents. We've had to shift how we
Mhm.
parent. And I kind of have had to pick up the slack a little bit, with because of him being ill and things like that.
Yeah.
But we're still gonna still have fun. We still want to have fun and make memories
Mhm.
and give our daughter the best life possible. And we're not gonna let it
Absolutely.
stop us. I want her to look back at her childhood and go like, even though she's known no other life, she's always
Mhm.
known her life with her father being sick. But just because that's the case doesn't mean that we still can't have fun, you know.
Exactly.
So like she
Exactly.
went, like last fall they went to a father-daughter dance, and okay, I didn't go because it was a father-daughter dance, and as the caregiver I'm
Mhm.
concerned, but he had his medicine. He made sure he told one of the somebody there of what to do, like call me and get and what medic and where his medicine was. If something did happen, it didn't, and
Mhm.
and not living in that fear of still living life. He's like, I want to take my daughter to a father-daughter dance. It's like,
That's
okay,
nice. That's
here's
nice.
your medicine, and make sure you
Yeah.
vocalize to somebody what you need while you're there. And we were fine, and they had the best time. And
That's
that's what I
good.
want tenfold.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, and
Absolutely.
I want that to be the focus for. I hope all of
Absolutely.
you walk away after this this podcast episode that you're watching or listening to, that you feel inspired to do the same thing. It might be a little different, but still go after it. Don't let it
Mhm.
stop you. For my parents, I remember for them, they were very, very sick, and especially toward the end of my mother's life,
Yeah.
and my father was her primary caregiver. They would make trips up to our family cabin up on the Puget Sound in Washington, and it meant a lot of extra work. They had to make shipment arrangements to get mom's dialysis
Mhm.
medications and things like that, and pack a lot of extra medical gear like oxygen tanks and things like that in their van. But they did it because they wanted to go have fun at the cabin, get
Mhm.
away, unplug, and just make memories. And that's what I hope all of you will do in some way, shape or form. Okay, maybe it might not be going on an international trip, but what is something that you can do right now to start prioritizing yourself to where you're living your best life, and it will be established to be able to stay connected with that long after your caregiving season is over, and
Right.
also allows you to be more present with your loved one now and still be sharp and be able to do what you need to do to give, to make sure you do help them manage their illness by
Mhm.
taking care of yourself and making yourself a priority, because it's not
Oh,
selfish. Self-care is not selfish.
no.
It's so cliche. I know it's so cliche out there.
Mhm.
The internet
It
has
is.
just blown it up to be a buzzword, but it's so true. So Rick,
Yeah.
where can, if people are interested in learning about your course, learning more about your story and your work, what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Um, well, they can certainly email me if they'd like. I'll definitely respond. It's my email is rick@forfamilycaregivers.com, FOR, not the number, forfamilycaregivers.com. I have this comes up and I don't have it in front of me. I have a Facebook group that's also for family caregivers. And my course, the landing page for the course is at forfamilycaregivers.com. What else would it be, right?
All right. Well, we
I
will
got to keep my
definitely be,
card with me.
oh, it's okay. It's okay. Um, don't worry. For those wherever you guys are watching this episode, listening to this episode, all of Rick's contact information, his website landing page for the course, his email will be linked below.
Yeah.
And definitely, yeah, definitely be sure to check all that stuff out, guys, because it is amazing. It is amazing. And if you guys are struggling right now with feeling a little bit burnt out on the cusp of just feeling like the negative Nancy is just taking over, I will also leave below information to my 10 minutes to prevention workshop, which includes
Okay.
my prevent burnout. I'm sorry, guys, not enough caffeine today. My burnout and recovery prevention toolkit for caregivers workbook,
Yeah.
and also a complimentary caregiver clarity call as well. All that information will be linked below, as well as
Mhm.
my email or any contact information I have if you want to get connected. And guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Rick, thank you for your time. I loved our
Oh, you're very
conversation.
welcome. Can
Yeah,
I just say one last thing?
of course.
Look for the humor in things too. Not to make fun of your loved ones, but they do funny things, not purposely, and those create memories for you. I told you, Melissa, and then I'll end it. I took Sonia out for breakfast. We went to IHOP, International House of Pancakes. And while I'm paying the bill on the way out, she grabs a pancake off somebody else's plate. And he was very nice about it. And he said, that's okay. Because he realized, something's not right and she's harmless. And and I was so embarrassed. In my haste to get out, I opened the only alarmed door in the restaurant. So the sirens are blasting, everybody's looking at us, and Sonny's just sitting there contentedly eating the pancake. But you got to look for the humor in things. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, just,
Yeah. Or
you know,
or I will add to that the unexpected blessings. I know
yeah,
with my
yeah.
situation, we never planned on me being a stay-at-home mom. We're just a middle class working
Mhm.
family. We, at the time, trying to work paycheck to paycheck, and
Right.
um, you know, when we couldn't afford daycare where we're at. Oh my gosh, it's so
Mhm.
expensive. It's almost as expensive as paying rent for an apartment up here, and that's getting
Right.
ridiculous. And so we had planned when we had our daughter, when we found out I was pregnant, we immediately decided, okay, the minute after I have her, when I go back to work, we're going to go on opposite shifts, so that way
Mhm.
one of us can always be home with our daughter. Well,
Right.
obviously, when the pandemic hit and my husband started getting sick, the last thing I wanted to do, thinking with my medical professional brain, was I don't want strangers in our house because we have a
Yeah.
pandemic
Yeah.
going on. And so it became a no-brainer for me it was a no-brainer for me to quit my career, be a full-time stay-at-home mom,
Mhm.
and and a primary caregiver for my husband. But of course,
Yeah.
that impacted like our income and how we're going to
Right.
live and things like that. But I love how God has still provided. I mean, we still have to do our due diligence and be careful, but we're okay. We're okay.
Mhm.
And I never had planned on being a coach or anything or building a business, but I love how it has come to that, to where I've gotten
Mhm.
to do this. I love what I do, and I want to encourage you guys that sometimes sometimes there's good that come out of difficult situations like this, because sometimes what comes out of it is something that is a way for you to keep going. I love the business. It has given me a creative outlet to um, share my story, help
Mhm.
others, inspired others, connect with others, both in terms of how I coach, but also with people I've been trained by and meeting and gotten to and making friends, lifelong
Absolutely.
friends from other groups I've been trained in. So, besides looking for the humor, I definitely want you to look for the humor, because we all need to laugh once in a while. God gave us laughter from it. We do need to look for laughter. I do also want you to look for some of the happy, positive accidents that have come because of that.
Yeah.
We've had conversations. My husband and I have had conversations where we thought about maybe I should go back to work or whatever, and he's like, no, I want you home with our daughter. And frankly, I love the business too much. I love what I do,
Mhm.
and because it gives me the
That's nice.
flexibility to take care of him for him and be with our daughter. And
Yeah.
so I never thought I'd be a stay-at-home mom or
Right.
caregiver starting my mid-30s, but here we are, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So look for the humor and
Yeah.
look for the happy accents. Maybe there is a happy accident that has happened that maybe you just aren't aware of or really have thought about.
Hey, I'll throw something out. Be grateful that this didn't happen 10 years earlier, because now you have 10 more years of memories with your loved one.
Yeah,
People don't even think about that.
yeah, absolutely.
It's just one chapter in all of our lives. It's not
One
the entire
season. Yeah,
story.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not the
absolutely.
entire story.
No, it's not the entire story at all. I love that.
Mm-mm.
It's not the entire story, and the story keeps going. And just
Yes.
like, and a story has, if you're thinking of it from the standpoint of a book, many chapters. Some
Mhm.
chapters, yes, will be more hard than others. But some chapters, things are going to just be amazing, and
Mhm.
you're going to be on those highs. So, just look for
Absolutely.
the moments. Look for the
Yeah.
moments. It's not easy, but know that you don't have to go through this journey alone. There's resources
Right.
available. You can work with me. There's Rick. There's other
Mhm.
resources out there. Might have to do a little bit of due diligence and work, but hey, that's the thing. This is all about giving you tips and ideas on the podcast here. I'm very passionate about giving you guys resources and tips and
Yeah.
ideas. And even if you never work personally with any of the guests I have on here, guys, or you work with me, but if nothing else, if all you get this from a particular podcast episode is just being inspired to maybe go and to even just go and start something, whether it's a resource that or a guest working with a guest or a resource that we have to offer or I have to offer, that's fine.
Hmm.
If it's putting you in the trajectory to where you're more rounded and healthy and safe and able to and you're taking care of your mind, body, and soul, and then in turn being able to make sure that your loved one's mind, body, and soul are on top and that you're sharp to where you need to be to take care of your loved one, then I've done my job.
Hmm.
And I'll be totally
Yeah.
happy with that. So, Rick, thank you again for
Thank
sharing
you.
all your antidotes, everything. Definitely, guys, go email Rick. Be sure to reach out to Rick if you have questions at his email and get his course. His course sounds so great. If mindset is a big struggle for you, definitely
Hmm.
go check that out. And again, if you're on the cusp of burnout and need some help with that, definitely check out the link to my workshop and resources for that. All right, guys. Well, I will see you again in another episode of the Caregiving and Entrepreneurship Reimagined podcast again soon. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you're watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.
All right.